Hey everybody, how you guys doing today? Jim Prusek here from the Pain PT. And before we get today's evidence of the week, I just want to let you guys know if you need help, you're struggling, you're not sure if you have a neuroplastic condition, you want a diagnosis, you want some coaching help, one-to-one or group coaching, please reach out. You can go to my website, thepainpt.com, and learn more there. And that's it. Let's jump into evidence of the week. So today I want to talk about cognitive reappraisal or cognitive restructuring. Just like it sounds, the word cognitive means mental. It means a mind strategy that we're going to use to look at situations differently, to reappraise them or restructure them in a more positive light. It's sometimes called positive cognitive reappraisal or what we can call reframing. Okay, so we're going to go through four papers today, four studies to give you guys some evidence to see the power of it at work and why you should start using it yourself for your recovery from chronic symptoms. So the first paper here, 2024 paper, it is titled Positive Cognitive Reappraisal Flexibility is Associated with Lower Levels of Perceived Stress. Like I mentioned before, we can use this strategy to lower the stress. It's also known as an emotion regulation strategy, reappraisal. So what is positive cognitive reappraisal? What it is basically, like they say here in this paper, it's shifting the way we think about something. Okay, so it specifically involves reappraising negative situations to shift a negative or distressing perspective into a more positive, manageable, acceptable, or beneficial one, thus downregulating the associated negative emotional responses. So we know that these negative emotional responses or negative stress, right, is highly linked with these somatic symptoms in the body. So if we can get the stress down, we can get the emotions down, it will get the symptoms down. So reappraisal here can be achieved in various ways, like they mentioned in this particular study, such as searching for unexpected positives in a situation, accepting the circumstances, or distancing oneself from them, seeing the situation as a learning experience, applying problem solving, or posing optimistic expectations towards possible consequences of the experiencing. Searching for unexpected positives, okay, involves identifying benefits or opportunities in a seemingly negative situation. I've always said this, you can get this from some of my other videos. I said we need to see this as an opportunity. Whenever your symptoms come up or stress comes up, it is an opportunity for you to shift your brain. And that in and of itself is a reappraisal strategy right there. They mention here as an example, losing a job might be reframed as an opportunity to explore a more fulfilling career path. Acceptance involves cognitively altering one's perception of a situation to make it more tolerable. And it's interesting we think of the word acceptance because I talk about acceptance as a strategy as well. They say here acceptance can be seen as a reappraisal strategy because it shifts the perspective to tolerance, which positively alters the emotional reaction. Okay, so when we do like something like distancing, which is another reappraisal strategy, it involves taking a step back, viewing the situation from a more objective or detached perspective. It reduces the emotional intensity of the event by reframing it as less personal or immediate, and helps to mitigate the stress or negative emotions. So remember, the whole process of reappraisal or reframing it cognitively is to downregulate stress and downregulate emotion. Okay. Problem solving is another form of reappraisal. It's focusing on reinterpreting one's ability to manage the situation. Um, Optimistic expectations, like it sounds, involves anticipating positive outcomes despite the current situation or challenging uh, stressor that's occurring. Okay, these are all forms of positive cognitive reappraisal. So in this study, they took 100 students, college students, and again, they looked at levels of perceived stress that they had, or levels of stress, which can be considered health problems, uncomfortable environments like rainy weather, crowded buses, lack of time to get things done, world stressors like the war in Ukraine, fear of the future, exams, COVID-19. Remember, this paper was done a couple of years ago. So what they found again here was that the students who could engage in this positive cognitive reappraisal over a 3-month period, they found that these particular students had lower levels of stress. Okay, they had lower levels of perceived stress in their system. And they found that, again, in their own words here, we found that individuals with a greater ability to flexibly adapt, to use positive cognitive reappraisal tactics, such as some of the ones I mentioned before, like acceptance, unexpected positives, optimistic expectations, problem solving, and distancing, they had a substantial decline in their perceived stress over the study period. All right, so this idea, and you've heard this famous quote before, stress is 10% what happens to you, 90% how you respond to it. So in a way, cognitive reappraisal or reframing is a way we respond to the stress that is occurring in us, okay, by shifting the meaning or shifting the perception of what's going on to a more positive perception. The second paper I want to share with you guys today is flipping it to the opposite here. And this paper was 2024 as well. And the title was The Deficit in Cognitive Reappraisal. So an inability or lack of using it in individuals with anxiety or depressive disorders. And this was a meta-analytic review, so it took data from many, many studies. And the reason I want to share this one was because anxiety and depression, as many of you guys know, is highly linked with somatic symptoms in the body, highly linked with chronic pain and other chronic symptoms. And we know anxiety and depression are two causative factors for somatic symptoms in the body. And what they found here by looking through the data here, through multiple studies, is that yes, there was a lowering of the ability to use cognitive reappraisal capacity. There was a deficit there. So there was a lack of use of this. And so we could see that happening. And so that tells us, okay, well, we need to use it more. Okay, because anxiety and depression can take over, right, and start the mind in a very negative stance, negative rut that can continue to produce negative thoughts. And a lot of these people who are in this are not able to activate the cognitive reappraisal, which is exactly what we need to do as one way to help downregulate stress and emotion. So I wanted to share that study with you guys there, just to let you know that we see a deficit here and that we want to engage it more, especially in times of anxiety and depression. The third study I want to share with you guys here was another meta-analysis. Okay, we're taking data from many studies, also in 2024, of cognitive reappraisal and what's called personal resilience. Okay, the ability to be resilient. And resilience is a really important variable here because the more we can feel empowered, it's also called self-efficacy, the more we can know and trust and have confidence in ourselves, the better our well-being, the better our health overall, mental health, physical health, emotional health. And what they found here again in this review study here that looked at 55 studies, 29,000 people, so a lot of data here, is that they found that yes, indeed, there was an association here that cognitive reappraisal was positively related to personal resilience. Okay, so this ability to use the cognitive reappraisal was associated with higher personal resilience. Okay, so if we're finding ourselves having low resilience, let's start using cognitive reappraisal. Let's start getting that prefrontal cortex going in a positive direction to shift your emotional states to build resilience. Okay, people who have the resilience are automatically using this. A lot of us may need to learn to bring in the cognitive reappraisal, or what we call reframing, more often, more frequently. The last one I want to share with you guys today, the last paper, which I think you'll find potentially the most interesting, was around symptoms. Okay, this was again a 2024 paper here that was titled Mind Over Chronic Pain. So again, chronic pain is really probably one of the most common somatic neuroplastic symptoms we see, but by no means is it the only one, but it's one that's very well studied. So I look at the data there. So Mind Over Chronic Pain, a meta-analysis of cognitive restructuring in chronically ill adults. Okay, so cognitive restructuring is the same thing as reappraisal. It's in the same sort of category or vein of shifting our thoughts and our thinking. So again, they looked at data here in 11 studies, okay, published between 1991 and 2022. 693 people with different types of chronic conditions. Okay. And again, cognitive restructuring, as they say here in the paper, it's aiming to replace irrational pain-related thoughts with rational beliefs. Okay. And they say here it holds promise in altering the perception and the intensity of chronic pain. All right. And what was really interesting about this particular paper and study was they were just looking at pain intensity, assessing pain intensity. Okay, so they took a lot of other studies out of the equation, especially other studies that were bringing other techniques of cognitive behavioral techniques, and they isolated it down to this as cognitive restructuring, which is basically shifting the brain's irrational pain-related thoughts with more rational ones, getting out of things like catastrophizing. And this was the first review study that had looked at this, okay, on chronic pain intensity specifically with different types of chronic conditions. So what they found, let's go down to the data here and the results here, is that they wanted to look at the overall effect size of cognitive restructuring on chronic pain intensity in adults with chronic conditions. And again, 11 studies, 693 people. Findings indicated a significant large effect size unaffected by publication bias, suggesting the robustness of the effect, meaning that it had a major effect on reducing pain intensity. Cognitive reappraisal, cognitive restructuring in a positive way in these 11 studies, almost 700 people had a significantly large effect size of reducing pain intensity. So what that tells us, everybody, is the strategy that we want to start to employ and how we can look at situations much more positively. We need to get out of that negative thinking and negative rut that a lot of our brains are in and shift it to a much more positive perception. They say here that cognitive restructuring aims to reduce catastrophizing, which is a form of negative repetitive thinking. So it makes sense that this would have an effect, everybody, on pain intensity because we know catastrophizing, which I'll talk about another time with evidence of the week, is highly, highly linked with greater pain intensity and severity and duration. So hopefully you guys can learn from today's evidence of the week that what we call cognitive reappraisal in a positive way, or cognitive restructuring or reframing, that we start to use this strategy to shift the brain out of negative states, to shift the brain out of negative thinking, and to regulate negative emotional states or negative stress states. If you enjoyed today's video, please give it a like. I appreciate all of you. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet, and we'll see you guys next time. Take care now. Bye-bye.